As I shared, this plenary session is From Grants to Orders, Making Social Procurement Work for Livelihoods. This session is co-curated in partnership with IDH. And now I warmly welcome on stage the esteemed moderator, Ms. Jasmeet Dhingra, Director Programs, IDH India. Very warm welcome to you. And please join me now in welcoming on stage the esteemed panelists for this session. I welcome on stage Mr. Rangu Rao, CEO, Safe Harvest. A warm welcome to Mr. Vivek Prakash, Senior Vice President and Head CSR, Jubilant Ingravia Limited. We welcome on stage Mr. Nandan H. Ace, CEO, Last Forest Enterprises Private Limited. So a very warm welcome to our esteemed moderator and all of our panelists. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, may I request you all to please kindly have your seats. And I now take this opportunity to hand over the session to the esteemed moderator, Ms. Jasmeet Dhingra. May I request you to take it forward.
Use the podium in part. Great. Good morning everyone, or good afternoon actually. It's been lunch and I think everyone hopefully is still with us. We'll try to keep this engaging for everybody. But I guess to kick off this session, could we get the slides up? Yeah, great. To kick off the session, I think the session is certainly about a topic which I'm sure resonates with a lot of us. We're all in the room because we work with farmers, we work with collectives, we all are working or want to work with markets. And I think the conversation that we want to have here, building on what you've been discussing yesterday and will continue to discuss today, is how do we actually make the topic from livelihoods to include what we call social procurement, inclusive procurement. How do we do this? What do we need to do? And I think let me start with a question that all of us have heard in different capacities. Whether you're a funder donor, whether you're a collective, we've all asked this question, right? And how do I find a donor? You know, an NGO will ask it, a practitioner will ask it, a collective will ask it. And at the same time, we also hear a lot of us asking the graduation of this question, that how can I find not only a buyer, but a long-term buyer, right? We are looking to connect with markets here. But if we are honest, and I think that is where we're going to maybe hear from this great panel that we have with us as well today, that with livelihoods, the graduation of moving from grant and CSR is that we're not looking only for more projects, we are looking for those purchase orders, right? The grants and the CSR are catalytic for us. They help us, they help us get up. They help us stand up, but it's the purchase orders that keep us there on our feet and keep us going, right? So the world that I come from, as Jasmeet from IDH, is from the world of sustainable value chains, inclusive value chains, where I work with not only NGOs, but I work with companies, I work with the state government, like many of us here. But I think everyone is grappling with that same question, right? That are we asking, are we on the right side of that question or that equation? We're all working on great projects. We all are really have sort of improved and have become better and better at writing great proposals as well, right? Really looking at livelihood and impacts. We're all even here today in the room because we're here to learn from each other, network from each other, make new connections. We all attend great conferences. But at the end of the day, when we go back, every farmer, every collective, everyone is asking one simple question, right? They are asking, do I have a stable buyer? Do I have a contract? Do I have, sort of my supply chain issues sorted out? If I do supply to this company, will I get a decent value for what I produce? And I think at the summit today, that is what we're really looking to talk about, right? That if we are talking about social procurement as a livelihood strategy, then we need to become even more adept at talking the language of procurement. So let's talk a little bit about that. Where are the gaps? Where are the gaps that we see, right? So for us, when we sort of speak today, we are going out there, we are engaging with procurement teams. Most procurement teams, while you're sitting there and you're sort of pitching what is important to you, what is impact, most of the procurement teams are going to sit there and look at you and they will hear the stories, sorry for the shift, will hear the stories of how many farmers are we reaching, what is the impact we're creating, how are we affecting soil and water, the great projects that exist. But at the same time, the person across the table is also silently saying, it's procurement, right? Within companies, and I'm going to say this lightly, procurement is considered the boring function. It's the function where everyone wants to talk about cost and quality and reliability and risk. And impact is usually the fifth thing that they look at, right? So as a procurement function, how do we be aware of that? So an FPO or an NGO will go up and say how many women we work with, how much of our production is regenerative, how many trainings we have done. The person across the table is saying, will you just deliver to me on time? Will you meet my specifications? If I have a contract, are you able to meet that volume? And what will I do if there's a crop failure? Right? These are the questions that sit behind the person who's talking procurement. So unless we convert and think about how we can marry or merge or convert our impact story also into a procurement story, the market that we want to tap into may not move with as much speed and scale as we want, right? And that's what we sort of want to really, really touch upon and talk. So 3 shifts, I think, is what we will touch upon in this panel as well. Maybe the first one, which touches a little bit about CSR, the role of CSR. CSR has been immense, has shown an immense contribution on a couple of different areas. So whether it's building capacity at the field level, whether it's sort of incubating a lot of social enterprises and ventures, whether it's about farmer training, pilots on climate smart agriculture, even scaling those pilots. But if you think about it, a CSR budget is typically 1 to 2%, at least by law, is what companies tend to spend on CSR. A procurement budget, on the other hand, is normally 60 to 70% of a company's budget, right? So if we really want to scale livelihoods, are we ready to start asking a question which says that we funded, and move from we funded a project to we funded how we buy? In a typical CSR project, you might hear a story which ends like this, which says after 3 years, 2,000 farmers were trained, their yields went up by 30%, their incomes increased by 50%. But in a social procurement story, the same story would end, maybe it would even continue in this way, right? Where a company would say, we've adapted our business model or our sourcing model. We are now working with these FPOs on a regular basis. We have understood how risks, need to be managed and shared equally between us. And the CSR money that we have as a company, we use it to build resilience. We don't use it to do business. And I think that's probably maybe sometimes a little bit of an uncomfortable question, because what we're really then asking of practitioners and people in the room is, when we design projects, are we really looking at the future purchase order in those projects? Because that's something perhaps that if we start working backwards, it will serve us, right? Can we see the buyer for whom we are preparing this collective? Are we already seeing whether the category is spices or cotton or dairy or food services or catering that we are preparing this enterprise or this collective for? And within the company, who will own this relationship when it comes to CSR? So after CSR, who's the next owner of the relationship that we are developing with these FPOs? I think when we think of any company, I wouldn't even underestimate, and Vivek, maybe later on we'll hear your views on this, is I wouldn't even underestimate the smaller actions that a company can take to build a relationship with some of the FPOs. So think of, at your office event, who's, are they sourcing the snacks from a local FPO? Who's catering the event? Who's doing housekeeping? Where are the corporate gifts coming from? Even these relatively what we think are smaller actions are actually the start of a very powerful proof of concept in any company. And I think is that something we can begin with to start creating shifts within companies on moving from CSR to social procurement. And maybe the second shift is a little bit harder, because this is where it starts, sort of digging to the middle of that pie. We're talking about how you start showcasing impact, but you build into your procurement readiness. So many collectives will tell the story of how many marginalized communities are involved, how much water is saved, how many women are in leadership. And all of this is very, very valuable. Absolutely, we must keep it, right? This is the story of the impact. But I'm going to flip the scene again and say a procurement manager who's sitting on the other end will also be asking about governance. In that FPO, in that collective, is it well managed? Are their accounts clean? Is there clarity on the margins? Who signs these contracts? These are the kind of questions they will be asking. On quality, they will say, do they have basic SOPs? In reliability, they will say, do they understand lead timings? Do they understand volumes? Do they understand logistics? With data, they'll say that, okay, I get impact data by way of reporting, but will they also be able to, sort of give me insight on where the product is coming, what kind of practices have gone into it, so that we can make claims. So when we strengthen the FPOs, the question is, are we strengthening them just for reporting, or are we strengthening them for procurement? And I think here the idea is, can then every FPO, some of many that we see, especially in the corridors that we've crossed here, right, the best of the best, they have a market CV. Just like you and I have a CV. We all have CVs which put out our skills, our expertise, what we're good at, hard skills, soft skills. Where is that one-page market CV of any FPO and collective, which talks about volumes, which talks about commodities, which talks about their governance? And can we put this in place for that first interaction with companies? That's how you build trust, right? So they know that you know what you have to put on the table. And at this point, I think a lot of us might already be saying that we can do all of this, but how do buyers actually decide? And there are 4 cycles, and I'm sure we'll hear more of this again from our panel, because they have all the case practices to share here. But if you look at this question, we all have grappled with it. Typically, if I was to simplify it in a large way, most sourcing cycles, most strategy cycles will have these 4 stages, right? Any company will first look internally. They will ask, what does my business need? What categories are critical for me? What does this link, how does this link to my climate goals, my inclusion goals, my nature goals, and all of that? In the second stage, they will look outside. And they will say, okay, I need to buy cotton or chilies or so-and-so. What is happening in the regions where I have to source from? Is the community struggling? Is there water? Is there some risk that I don't know, and so on? How are my suppliers in that region doing? Are they working for me or not, and so on? With all this information, they will make some choices, which is natural. You can't do everything you need to. You need to weigh in what you need. So they will make some choices. Do we go regenerative? Do I look how to reduce my carbon in my supply chain and focus on farmers and practices to do that? Should I really invest in FPOs because they can be my future supplier? These are the kind of choices they will have to make. And finally, once they make the choices, that is then when they start thinking about, okay, if I need to work with an FPO, then what kind of things are necessary in a contract? How can I incentivize them to supply on time or in that volume and at a consistent level, and so on. So with all of these, sort of various things that they need to do, some key questions, are sort of coming up constantly. There are examples of sustainable practices that they can follow in the way of getting things done. And what some of these choices, what do they actually mean for their suppliers and their FPOs? And why I'm actually sharing this is, while we as IDH developed this to coach companies on how to work better with collectives, this is actually a tool that you can flip around, right? So if you're a practitioner, if you're, work with FPOs, if you're a social enterprise, can you flip this around and use the tool to prepare for that conversation with companies? So instead of saying, let's say that we work with 2,000 farmers who are growing wheat or maize or, so on, spices or chili, can you say, we understand what your risks are, we're here to help you mitigate some of that. Or we understand you're committed to regen ag, so here's what we are doing that can help you support that goal. And when you start putting that in place, we can move to the third shift, which is actually not only pushing for premiums when we go to companies and say, look, our products are organic, we work with women collectives, these are climate smart products, so give us a premium. But it does work sometimes, but I feel like most of the room will agree that it doesn't work most of the time. So in that case, can you try a different language, right? Can you say that I'm not asking for a premium, but let me discuss with you how we can actually assess and share the risk. Because today the farmers and the collectives are taking most of the risk, right? On pricing, on climate, on commodities shifting up and down, delays in payments or rejections. When you are ready to talk to a company, can we ask that question? Can we ask that question of how can we create more equitability in creating the risk so that I feel more comfortable being that supplier to you? Longer term contracts may help me. Can we look at volume bands, but not based on products of impact, but rather quality and volume? Can we co-design some mechanisms, work in partnership with CSR, with insurance companies to account for risks which happen not due to our fault, but due to external reasons, climate, for example? And here's the role of CSR again, right? That de-risking grant that you need to build resilience, how do you bring that in? Because ultimately you want to land at a kind of contract or a kind of arrangement or a partnership where it's not the FPO that bears all the loss, but you are equipped to answer and work towards a partnership where you say, if it fails, we do all of this, but we are dependent on climate, etc., and resources. If it fails, we need to sit and review together how we share that risk and how we share that loss. This obviously sounds all very idealistic, right? We are in a country with millions and millions of smallholders, so certainly very, very idealistic. But at the end of the day, it's also how we build our partnerships. And even if there are success cases, let's discuss them, because let's find those commonalities which can make it grow. So ultimately, I want to sort of pause here and move to the fireside chat. We will hear more from the really great panel that we have here together. But the reason for sharing this as a tool is so that it can actually help us flip the conversation around. When we say social procurement, we're not just talking about working with FPOs or with women collectives. We are saying let's use this tool to redesign how we negotiate contracts. Let's look at different ways to engage different types of capital in the supply chain. And when you go out on a Monday, depending on who you are in the room, whether you're an NGO or an FPO or even somebody who's a company or working with multilaterals, let's see what are those actions that we can take which start shifting or the needle a little bit on this discussion. So here's what we all can do. And maybe with that, I will pause and move to this group. But thank you for listening to the opening part of this context setting. Let's move to the fireside chat. Yep. Okay. Oh, sorry. That's yours. Okay. Oh, the mic is on. Okay. So, great. We have a super fireside, super panel here with us today. And I think since we've got a little bit of context about what is the needle we are trying to shift, let me just dive right into it, right? So, Rangu, you're next to me. So you're on the hot seat first. I think we've really already spoken about livelihoods and how we can really start moving, from talking not just about livelihoods, but really making farmers partners in the supply chain and value chain. And can you already start us off maybe by sharing that one example where you've seen project move from purchase order? You will probably have many examples, but I'm going to ask you to break it down for all of us.
Sure.
Is it on? No, one second, I think long press, sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you for this. Well, just to give a backdrop to this, to your question, is, I come from a space which is linked to sustainable agriculture practices, where people move out of conventional mainstream farming, chemical-intensive farming, to more sustainable practices and not using chemicals. If you see the history of this movement, you'll find that this movement has been, that way incubated, or it was born in the civil society movement, right? And it's the markets and the state which has come in later. They have come to adopt it.
Yeah.
So it's primarily housed there, and then probably the success made, it was acknowledged and then adopted by the market and the state. So there are many examples, as you just said, about what the civil society, the way it has contributed. So even if you look at my partners, when they took up, let's say, pesticide-free agriculture, market was a non-entity for them. It was more from the back end that they were coming, where they felt that these practices, which the farmers have been doing for long, are unsustainable. Market has only been like a lever, which has made it possible for them to adopt, to bring in more farmers into the fold. And there's an example of, there's a partner of mine in North Karnataka, in Raichur district, and they work with paddy farmers. They work on pesticide-free agriculture. By the way, they are one of the founders, that organization, one of the founders of Safe Harvest. And when they began their work, they were, I think, probably working with about 100 or 150 farmers. And these were non-contiguous farms. And paddy is a very unique crop that way, right? So in the sense that water flows from one field to the other, which does not happen in any other crop. So it's a very regulated and a very rigid system. You can't be a non-paddy farmer in a paddy area, right? So everybody has to do paddy. So the issue with us for pesticide-free agriculture is that if there are farmers and they are non-contiguous and they adopt pesticide-free agriculture, the crop may not end up having no residues, right? Because water is passing through chemical agriculture also. What Safe Harvest did, or let's say this market lever did, was to make it possible to get more farmers so that this contiguity could be established. And you had access to a crop, or let's say a produce, which was completely safe. It was pesticide free, because now you had farms which were contiguous. So I think from project, so if there was no real attempt to make farmers shift, right, to let's say sustainable agriculture practices, probably Safe Harvest would not have been able, the market lever would not have actually been able to do that, because the kind of investments which is required at the back end no entity of the size of Safe Harvest would be able to do that. So I think there is some kind of a link between what civil society, or let's say a collective of farmers does with some support, and finally the market provides them that extra push, or let's say the benefit of actually continuing that practice and bringing many more farmers into the fold.
Super. No, thank you. Thank you for that, Rangu. Maybe a quick follow-up question to you, actually. Now that you are and very successfully working with the farmers, and perhaps your reflections on what you heard around the market CV, right? So if you were to engage with these FPOs, what are those unobvious things that you would look for in either the governance or the data, or what are those elements, right, which would actually make it a successful supplier relationship for you or partner relationship for you?
Well, let me try and segregate this entire FPO, the canvas. There are many FPOs I've seen that who are at their very, very initial stage, right?
Indeed.
They're trying to get membership, they're trying to raise equity. Correct. So these are very, let's say, newly born FPOs. They're trying to attempt to come together, right? And the second category would be of those who have passed this stage and now are trying to aggregate, procure, provide some kind of a loop, in the sense of a tool by which farmers can actually are able to sell, right? And the third is that those who are already engaged with organized markets, right? So those, they have buyers and they are trying to sell the produce. So they're negotiating with organized markets. We actually work with the latter two. We don't actually engage with the first ones, because we don't think that we either have the expertise or nor the space to be able to do that. Now, the first thing for us is because we deal in pesticide-free commodities, we have to ensure that the organization or the FPO that we are working with is engaged in sustainable agriculture practices. Okay. So that's the number one. That is a non-negotiable. That they should be already be engaged, and they should be ready to kind of start doing that practice. So purchase can come later, but at least they are part of the cohort. That's number one. And the number two actually is also the fact that are these FPOs that we are engaged with, are they ready to kind of climb up the value chain? Because we are a small entity, right? So if my FPO, my partner, is only prepared to deal in primary commodities, let's take, I took the example of paddy, for example, these paddy farmers. If a collective is not ready to kind of, from paddy, let's say, go up to rice, or let's say, is not ready to grade paddy, even if that stage is something which they're not willing to do, we would find that partnership, hard to kind of make it sustainable, right? So that is a very important thing, that these FPOs who we deal with are willing to climb up the value chain. So they see some business opportunity and a business sense in trying to do that, because there is a higher value which is locked there, and that has to be unlocked. And that is something like a win-win solution, because if they do that, my inventory goes down, so my operational costs come down, and they get a better price. So that is something that my FPOs or my partners should be willing to do. So these two are actually the major points that we will be, we always look at in trying to form relationships. And the third is that these are not one-off relationships. Absolutely. So it's not as if you have some kind of surplus available with you and you're looking for markets and Safe Harvest provides you that kind of market. We are looking at long-term relationships. So it's like, because those are also very important, because somewhere or the other, they need a market, a kind of, let's say, a reliable source to whom they can sell. We also require a reliable source, right? Yeah. So we both actually have the similar sort of requirements. So if that kind of this kind of a happy marriage does not happen, right, where they look at us as a temporary source, then there are problems to it. So it's that they should look at us as a long-term partner, They should be ready to climb up the value chain and be pesticide free.
Okay, great. I think, and that's certainly great experiences from one type of model. Now I'm going to maybe jump to you, Nandan, for a different kind of reflection, or maybe similar, maybe related, let's see. But I think as last forest, since you have really strong, sort of impact stories to tell, working with indigenous communities, very strong on conservation, even more so with climate resilience. I think it's a very similar type of question to you because you do have a very strong impact lens as well to put out. What have you had to do or to build internally, right, to keep that going, to build that story not only for impact but also for procurement? What have been some of your processes look like? What have you struggled with? How have you maintained that? Because I understand it's still a growing story, but where has it been? What have you had to build so far?
Yeah, so we are in the Nilgiris, in the Biosphere Reserve, right? So we are working with 1,800 indigenous members. So they're not farmers, traditional farmers per se, and they look at both agroforestry as well as forest collection, right? Then the rules change a little bit from hardcore agriculture to agroforestry, and suddenly something like the Forest Rights Act comes into the picture of what they have to collect. So then, when it goes to the market doesn't differentiate these sources. So then price becomes a challenge, quality becomes a challenge. So we are focused on quality. And we said if a commodity is being sold at 100 and we want to sell at 120, why are we paying that extra premium? So that was going back to then the quality. So then the story becomes an attribute to the quality, and not vice versa. Often we were riding on the story, but we're not able to sell. So then we said, you want premium quality, you want from the forest, you want organic, you want natural, then this is the product to go. And by the way, the story is this, right? That's what, I think that's, it took us a while to arrive at that. We kept pushing on the story, but the market wasn't kind enough, so we had to make that switch, and then that's helpful.
And maybe this is also a very short, quick follow-up question to you, more related to the chat we were having. So sorry if I'm taking you off guard, but we discussed a lot about how you look then for markets and how you had to adapt and sort of change
Right.
approach. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
Right?
So a little bit of context is we are a private limited, Last Forest, but we have a sister company that's an FPO and a mother organization that's an NGO. I call it as mother and sister because both the FPO and us were projects within the NGO when the funding or from donors was coming. But the projects became so big that they had to be hived off to become enterprises with themselves. And then because of the complexity of our geography and the people that we are working with, we had to split the value chain into production and marketing or sales. So production became FPO and marketing became private limited, right? So then the FPO is focused on how do you train the Adivasis, what is the soil quality in the Nilgiris, so on. And we were focused on how do you sell on Amazon, or how do you sell to Nature's Basket,
Yeah.
or how do you look at, I don't know, building e-commerce sitting in the hills, right? It's not easy because logistics also is an issue. So because we changed roles, also access to capital changed. The NGO could get grants, private limited we have to get equity or debt. The FPO could get, let's say, a loan from NAP Kisan, but I'll get a loan from HDFC Bank.
Yeah.
So as a group of institutions, we started looking at the market from a different angle. So the question you asked him, so similarly, none of our projects turned into a purchase order, but the donors that came to NGO started giving us corporate gifting orders, right? So that became,
Which is a different kind of PO. It's
Exactly.
really getting
Right.
started by thinking of, I have to deliver,
yeah.
right? It's still an order.
Correct.
Yeah.
But then what happened was that there was no repeat orders. They would say, we bought from you last year, so this time we're buying from somebody else. So corporate gifting is just one-off. So then we started talking about social procurement. So that was one market. So Vivekji also is part of it. We're trying to build what's called a social procurement coalition, which is like a dialogue between the social sector and the corporate sector. And you mentioned earlier that if you're having an event, let's say the cookies at the back, no, where is it coming from? Is it coming from an FPO? Is it coming from a bakery? Or in the campus, you've got canteens. Where does your rice come from? Where do your spices come from? Can that become part of your regular procurement? Maybe can you commit 5% of your procurement, annual procurement, to source from social sector?
Yeah.
And maybe you have to, at some point, meet it as eye to eye and not a top-down situation.
Super. No, thanks for that, Nandan. I mean, great reflections. And because you were talking about how CSRs, has sort of been spurred off into social enterprise, Vivek, maybe I'll come to you because I think this is an area where you certainly have a lot of reflections. We'd love to hear them, right? Like, when did you see us cross the bridge from CSR as catalytic to also moving towards something that either has revenue targets or POs as the end goal, right? And yeah, over to you.
Yeah, actually, I'm from Jubilant Bhartiya Group, and I'm heading CSR, but I'm more, so people in the organization, they consider me more as a business person. So why it is happening? So I'm giving you one example and then you can understand. So you have to become an example, lead by example kind of thing. So during COVID, there is one product in the company. It's called herbal choline. So herbal choline is like Lip 52 for poultry farm. So poultry consumption, chicken consumption. So usually they eat and they just pick. So to strengthen their liver, just like us, we are consuming Lip 52. So they are getting this herbal choline. It is making them healthy so that they can absorb food properly and grow within those 45 days target, so that it can go to the market properly.
Correct.
So why herbal choline? If herbal choline will not be there, then antibiotic will be there. So Jubilant is the only company in the food sector, especially in Domino's business, QSR business, which is only procuring antibiotic-free chicken and using that. So one way where farm to fork, where we are serving food through Domino's pizza, so the chicken which is being used in that Domino's, so that is antibiotic-free. And on other side, there is one company, Jubilant Ingravia, which is manufacturing one product, which is going to poultry farm, which is promoting antibiotic-free chicken. So what happened? The major raw material of that antibiotic, this herbal choline is neem powder.
Okay.
During COVID, there was scarcity of neem because there were multiple use of neem at that time. And again, sourcing neem was difficult. So because since I spent now, this is my 19th year in the organization, so I am now uplifted at the executive committee in the organization. So I was listening the business review and they were telling that there is a scarcity of neem powder and we are not able to get from the market.
Yeah.
Then I thought, I'm working in the community, we are working with SHG, and why there is scarcity of neem?
Correct.
So you go any part of this country, you will find neem tree, then why there is scarcity? Then I told my coordinator, can you discuss with your SHG, can they collect neem and provide this neem, convert into neem powder and supply? Then again, this supply chain, this issue. So they started saying, no, so our R&D will tell which type of quality they have to supply. Then one person, so I contacted them, they told, no, they are, so it is being pulverized. What is pulverized? And it's just just like atta chakki, they have to just make powder of neem leaves. But again, they told, no, it's required to be pulverized in SS machine, stainless steel machine.
Yeah.
Then I said, okay, we will. So I sent one of my person in one Innova car with some neem leaves to Nagpur, where they are manufacturing this kind of pulverization machine for pharmaceutical company. Suddenly, one person from the ground, my coordinator, so they are very good. So he told that, sir, he is from Baroda. So he told, in Gujarat, everywhere people are making such kind of machines. I will get it done in Baroda. Why you are sending us to Nagpur? He immediately contacted one fabricator. He fabricated that machine. We supported this SHG group to establish that. They started collecting. So women self-help group, they started collecting from the community, from the forest, from their villages, and the neem leaves. They started drying it, supplying to that SHG who has established this pulverization unit. Now they started supplying to the company. So that time I was not thinking this is social procurement. But finally it has become a social procurement. So how you leverage this entire CSR network, CSR projects to support business to become socially responsible. You won't believe after that it has become mandatory for the company that any product which can be procured from the society, from the community, we will go by for that. And again, whatever compliance will be required. Like after that, all compliances have been done by those SHGs. So our supply chain people gone there, our quality people gone there, our safety and EHS people gone there, and they supported them to be compliant where they are manufacturing it. So this is the responsibility of business, and now both are getting benefit.
Right.
SHGs are getting benefit because they are getting direct order from the company, and they are getting livelihood support. At the same time, company is getting their inventory close to their factory. This is the biggest achievement for them. Rate, we are not compromising. Whatever rate they were getting from the market, we are giving to SHG. But the best part is that inventory cost. Now, within the 500 meter inventory is available. So this is the benefit. If you are going for this social procurement, no doubt you are adding sustainability in your business also. So like that, there are many such examples. Now, after COVID, we added at least 5-6 items in chemical company. In other part, like in Domino's, Jubilant Food Works. So we created one company, Jubilant Consumers. So earlier, around 100% procurement was done from the market, mandi, especially for the vegetable, capsicum, onion, and tomato. Now, slowly we started procuring from farmers, FPOs.
And can I ask, Vivek, what allowed you to do that? So if you had to summarize and say, this is what helped us shift that pie little by little, more and more. What changed? What was really, is it about setting targets? Is it about working at the source?
No, this is purely for sustainability because you are a brand. You are a QSR brand. You have to ensure traceability of your product. If you are procuring directly from the farmers or FPOs, you are establishing that traceability. Without that, you cannot assure quality. Whatever you are procuring from market, you can't assure that this is not pesticide has not been used, or they are having ethical labor practices or something. You cannot.
So you get a view right till the end, and I think that itself is quite insight.
So till date, we have not achieved 100%. I can't say that we are we have achieved that, but we have reached to 50%.
Got it.
So it took at least 7-8 years, but we reached at that level. So this is the thinking process. If you are creating an example, certainly organization. So CSR is giving you that leverage to do some experiment in the community,
and then you can absorb it back into your business. So I think maybe then let me, Rangu, come back to you with that as well, right? So when we hear pesticide-free spices or products in general, it sounds like a premium product. But where you started, you also shared that it was actually about mitigating some of the risks and building more resilience in there. How does that help you, when you're engaging the market? Are you able to see that they are giving more value and you're able to share it? What is this? Is there a struggle with sharing of value for that pesticide-free product where you're sourcing from?
When we sell to the market?
Or when you source from farmers? Yeah, so both which ways, right? You said you also need the market, and likewise you are that market for them. How does the value, sharing across that chain look like?
Yeah, actually, if you look at Safe Harvest procurement process and our protocol, uh, first of all, most of our organizations that we work with, the FPCs, and that's our mandate to actually work with collectives. Most of my collectives are in very difficult geographies. If you see what conventionally they were doing before Safe Harvest entered, was the fact that even though they were practicing sustainable agriculture, the produce was going into mainstream. And also, they're too far from organized markets, what are called mandis.
Yeah.
Uh, and for a small farmer, it just doesn't make sense to go to those mandis. So, if you are 60, 70 kilometers sitting away, the logistics cost will kill you. Anyway, it's impractical to carry the kind of produce you have because a truck would have a capacity of 5 tons and you may have only 1 ton. So, it doesn't just work out. It's unviable. So they end up selling to the same trader from where they buy their inputs or wherever they go for their small credit, etc. It's a classical case of interlocked markets, So you buy, when you go to these traders to buy, you buy very expensive. And when you go to sell your produce, it goes very cheap. What Safe Harvest actually has done is kind of attempted to break this by simply because we go to collection center. We establish collection centers with the help of our farmer organization partners, which are very close to farm gate.
Right.
That's number one. And the price of the mandi is offered to you at your farm gate.
Okay.
So there are some quality standards, but that is the number one thing that we do. The second is that it is completely fair in terms of weighing practice, etc., because everything is left to the farmer organization.
Right.
It's not something that we stand and it's our weighing scale or something like that. And third is in terms of payments. Payments are made between 24 to 48 hours, and this is the biggest pain point for a small farmer. The farmer, if he has to sell to someone, whether it is close to the village or to an organized market, will probably have to go at least 3-4 times before the entire value can be realized, the money can be realized. So they are saved from this entirely. There is no premium price as such, but this acts as a premium to them. And lastly, the practices that they follow, there is also a savings on inputs.
Okay.
So you go down on inputs, although there is an increase somewhat in terms of human effort, right? But they are anyway doing that. So in case I can reduce market inputs and I can give them a better price, all told, it's about a difference of about 25 to 30% which makes on their income. So that is something that we try to do, which you can say that yes, there is a kind of premium which a farmer gets, which makes them stick around. And there is also a promise of purchase year after year. And that is an extremely important factor for somebody to stick to certain kind of agriculture practices. Because if it's a one-off relationship, then it's difficult for a farmer to actually continue because they would say that, the other system is probably much more reliable, where they can sell whatever produce they have. But in my case, if I'm able to have a long-term relationship, then probably I'm doing a better job and then making them stick around. So that, I think, is
Great.
what
No,
which
thank you for that reflection, Rangu. And I keep hearing that we're out of time. I am going to only give a one-line question to Nandan to end this panel for us, because I think we've heard so much perspective. So Nandan, help us close it out. A question for you is that, based on your experiences as an NGO who's working with forest and hill communities, if you were to advise other organizations on something they can do differently from next month, what could that be?
Organizations?
Right?
What kind of
Similar organizations who are working with harder to reach farmer and producers, for example. How should they, one piece of advice on how they can engage with the market better or understand it better, what could that be?
I'll go back to the previous question. I'll connect it to the previous question that you said. One was quality, then second was we did a detailed analysis on competitors in the market. So then we had to change not just quality, but packaging, branding, positioning of all of it. And normally we see that when products come from NGO, packaging branding is not given as much importance because there's not money to put into the marketing part. So we made a conscious choice to make it good enough to be sitting in any stores in Bangalore. Let's say that you could take the creme de la creme stores of Bangalore, or you want to sell on cred, it's possible to do it. I think that was a little bit of a game changer for us accessing the market. But the FPO couldn't do it. It had to be the market CV that you talked of.
Yeah.
It had to be that organization which was us to do it. And that money had to come from equity or debt and not from a grant. So
Hence
we
the
have to look at-
multi-partnership structure
Yes.
of your entities.
Yes.
But thank you so much to this panel. I know it was a short period of time. We've also discussed a lot. And I think you have the rest of the day and everyone else to hunt down the experts on the stage to grill them further if need be. Thank you very much for your time. And back to you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So, from projects to purchase orders, and thank you for making it a very engaging discussion. Thank you to all. May I request you all to please kindly join us front and center for a group photo op. That concludes our session from grants to orders, making social procurement work for livelihoods.